Okay, it is 4 o'clock, so we are going to kick things off. Thank you guys for being here. We know that you are ready to start tree fording and going all in everywhere else. So thank you for spending some time with us. It means a lot. You are at the Designing the Future of Care, what emerging healthcare tech means for you. So there are no other sessions happening right now, so you're in the right space. But first, before we get started, we wanted to introduce ourselves. So my name is Lexi Jensen. I am a nurse that works at St. Luke's. I am a manager within our IT department, and I lead our emerging technologies lab operations, and I get to work with this wonderful human who will introduce herself.
Yeah, I'm Molly Zimmer. I'm the director for IHT Strategy and Enablement, which is new. That's why I had to go like that. A new function within our IHT department, and have just had kind of the joy of being along for the journey of kind of some of what you're going to see talked about today, and really excited to get to share with you and hear what kind of questions you might have at the end.
Yeah, so I'm going to leave the objectives here on the screen for a little bit, but really what we're wanting you guys to walk away with is understanding how healthcare is shifting and shaping, and what that means for you guys, whether that's a consumer, a family member, and even possibly an entrepreneur or a technician wanting to enter the space, because there have been a lot of changes this last year alone that have really pushed the envelope with where we can take things. So to get started, though, we want to hear from you guys, because with these things being as they are and with these changes coming forward, I want to know if you guys could wave your magic wand. What is it that you guys want healthcare to look like in 5 years' time?
So I would like to see assisted living facilities for younger adults like myself with developmental disabilities, but instead of like apartments, I'd like to see something where there's businesses involved in them. And so you could work on site, live on site, maybe have a clinic that specializes on site, and just allows me to be me, but not commit to work. And just because of the whole crisis of funding and stuff. So that's where I like to be, secure housing with fun work and opportunities to work.
So really shifting some of the priorities. Thank you. Any other thoughts?
Digestible for a layman like myself, I would say.
Like being able to understand.
Yeah, just be able to understand it and feel like I'm not missing important stuff. And you know, I'll do my own research to figure it out. But if it was a bit easier, that would be nice.
You want to be empowered to be a part of your healthcare. I love that.
Building off that understandability in billing, like why did it cost this much? Why am I getting billed again? Is that too much to ask, is it?
I'm asking the same thing, so I love that. Any other thoughts? Okay, I'm going to start here, then go there.
So I'd like to replicate what my experience in healthcare was when I was younger and had young married. So what I would like to see in 5 years is a personal relationship with a physician that knows me and my health, and it doesn't cost an arm and a leg to actually participate in healthcare, and not hesitate when you say, I don't feel good, and then hesitate to go because of the cost.
I'll echo the one on the billing. As I had somebody in the hospital for 5 days, I still don't know what the hospital cost is, and it's been 3 months. So that's...
I have a son. This is not part of the talk, but I had a son that who had to have open heart surgery when he was 4 months old, and we had to go to Stanford, and then we walked away and were billed for $1 million, and I was like, whoa, what? That's way more than my out-of-pocket maximum. And then trying to understand the system as someone that works in healthcare is very difficult, so I echo the same desire. But there's a lot of things that we need, and I feel like we're starting to demand. I feel like there's been the shift from it's just the way it is to being more consumer driven. And so this is a very exciting time within healthcare, within technology, because we get to drive and shape these things as technologists, as consumers, and start demanding some of these things. So I wanted to share some of the trends that are really driving some of the innovations. And so one of the big things actually kind of speaks to what you were sharing is patient acuity. We're seeing that more people, especially with our aging population, are sicker, or we're having more diseases that are comorbidities. So we're seeing not only do you have diabetes, but you also have heart failure, you also have kidney failure, and you're just sicker. And because of that, there are more demands from us as clinicians that we need to be delivering on. Next, there's a lot of financial pressures that are coming right now. There have been shifts from up above with government that are requiring us to move towards kind of that fifth point, which is value-based healthcare. If you haven't heard of what value-based healthcare is, at a very high level, there is an ask for us to move from making the highest paying things be our heart surgeries and making it the best field to go into to be a plastic surgeon. Instead, we are going to incentivize people being that primary care doctor. And we're going to aim to keep people healthier and out of the hospital, and instead try to deliver care in their homes and keep them healthier and be more proactive. And so some of those shifts are really shaping the direction that technology is trying to support. Additionally, we have a high level of burnout from our physicians, from our nurses, and we're having a hard time retaining and keeping those roles because we have a limited amount of people who are still wanting to go into those roles because they know the stories and the horror stories that go with it. And so there's a need for us to be thoughtful in how can we help, and we say, how do we augment what work they're doing to get them doing what they wanted to do. So like as a nurse, I became a nurse because I like to take care of patients. But when 70% of my job is now charting, that's not very fun. Also, there's a consumer demand with the expectation that I have a digital experience. Just like you were saying, you want things to feel like when you were younger. People want their experience in healthcare to be similar to the experience that they have when they're checking their, bank account and things like that, where they can see a dashboard, they can easily access the information. It's understandable. And so we're looking at these shifts that are really pushing us to think a little differently. And if we don't start thinking differently, people aren't going to choose you as their healthcare provider. And so all of those are helping drive innovation and open doors for things that in the past we would just accept as the way they were. So, the tech revolution. How many of you here have experienced going to the hospital or a clinic office and someone was writing your information on paper? Yeah? It's been a while though, right? Because we've gone from that to now there is something called the electronic health record for a lot of people. A lot of clinics, a lot of hospitals have moved from doing paper charting to now all of their documentation happens on a computer system. That was revolutionary when that happened. And similarly, there's a lot of shifts that are happening that I want to kind of give you some insights into that are emerging technologies that we're seeing. So how many of you here also have done like a telehealth visit when you had a clinic need and so you can call a virtual provider and get help, whether, I know my husband just needed to do a checkup on his medication dosage. And so instead of having to go into the clinic, he was able to just have a conversation with his doctor in 10 minutes and not have to leave our house and find a babysitter and do all of those extra things. Similarly, that same type of technology has moved into the hospitals, and we are having things like virtual nurses and virtual sitters. And so what that is it is transitioning some of that care that we currently have had to have a physical person, and we're able to have people in a virtual setting calling into the rooms and assisting, whether that is that nurse in the room or the patient. So for example, as a nurse, if I am giving you insulin for your diabetes, so I need to give you medicine to help with your blood sugar, I have to get a second person to verify that I have the right medication, the right dose, before I can give it to you. If everyone on the floor is busy, that can take up to 10 minutes. And it's very frustrating when I can't get done the task that I need to do now. And if I have that narrow window, that's frustrating not only for you, but for the patient and everyone involved. So instead, I can call my handy dandy virtual nurse. They can come into the room on a camera and they can verify that medication with me right as I need it. And so that shift in making some of those functions that require second eyes or ongoing monitoring is becoming readily available with virtual monitoring and care in healthcare. Another thing, ambient documentation. I think this is one, I don't know if anyone in the room has experienced, but in the clinic setting, when you go to a doctor's appointment, a lot of doctors in that setting have started using what's called ambient documentation. So they are able to just talk out loud, provide the care they need, and not be behind a computer because their phone, a microphone is picking up what they are saying, and then it's helping transcribe that and turn it into that after visit summary that you're getting at the end of your visit. And so they don't have to be writing like mad all of the little notes. It's hearing the medications they discussed. It's hearing their assessment. And it's taking some of that busy work out of their job to be done during that visit. And what we're seeing is physicians are very happy. They love it. And St. Luke's has been doing a study and a pilot with different ambient documentations. And how much pajama time are they saying it saves? So when they go home at night, they're not spending the same time trying to make up the documentation that they weren't able to do during their day. So it's increasing satisfaction dramatically. Also, predictive analytics. So because of technology like AI that you guys have been hearing a lot throughout Hackfort, we are utilizing AI within the healthcare space to kind of catch near misses. We're also using it to kind of flag things that are at risk. So there is something called sepsis. It's when you're very sick, you have an infection, and there are little early warning signs. And so AI can help you detect it earlier than a human can. And so there's these predictive analytics that we're starting to get that support us catching things early on. It's even getting to the point, though, where it can look at a patient's documentation and proactively estimate what their healthcare needs are going to be 5 years down the road, and how do we help prevent the trajectory that they're on right now. And so it's really exciting to see how AI is helping us also be a bit more proactive in our care. There is also ideas around real-time location services. So there's technology that can sense where you are, where a patient is, and it can help us improve how we do our work. So how many of you guys have gone into a clinic and sat in a waiting room or in an emergency department and not been seen for a very, very, very long time, and you wonder, was I forgotten? So we can use technology like real-time location services, and we could give the patient a badge when they come in. They can go and be roomed in their room, the patient room, and then let's say 5 minutes goes by. We can have things like a dashboard that notifies you, okay, 5 minutes have passed. That's now a yellow indicator. Someone needs to go in there soon. Once we hit that 10-minute mark, let's change that to red. That way we don't have patients sitting and not knowing when or that they've been seen. And so we're trying to think about ways that we can use technology that's in existence to optimize the way that we do work. Lastly, I kind of want to just paint a picture for you, which is something that Molly's going to dig into that we're doing actually in our space. But there are a lot of transitions into digital offerings of things that are very manual today. So when you're looking at a patient room, typically in a hospital, before you go in the room, they have lots of signs all around. You see there's the patient's room number, but then maybe there is a big, for us, we do like a little ribbon that's yellow, and that means, hey, they're a fall risk. If the patient is has an isolation status. So let's say you are contagious for some reason. There are a number of things that we want to tell people that, hey, you'll get sick if you go in there without protection. So we put signs up. And these are manual signs that if you don't put it up and someone goes in, then you have to later catch them and be like, oh, you went into a MRSA room, I'm sorry, you didn't have gloves on. So there's a lot of manual processes that we are trying to look at and address, and one of those is digital signage, digital whiteboards. And so can we transition away from making the nurse in the room write their name and say, okay, you're a fall risk, you are a Spanish speaker, and you took your meds at this time, all things that are in our electronic record, and transitioning to a system that automatically updates and is in real time and provides the communication that not only the care team needs, but is beneficial to the patient, so you can actively participate in your care. And so right now we're in the process of being like, okay, how do we do that so it's patient focused? How do we do it so it's easy to understand? What visibility do patients want? What is it that a family member coming in needs to see so that they actually do all the things we're hoping that they do? And so digital experiences for things like signage and whiteboards is big for us to think about. And then earlier when I was talking about that ambient documentation, can we bring that from the clinic space like we're seeing it right now into the inpatient room? And leverage things like computer vision that can monitor and see what I'm doing actively and help me document that. As I'm talking out loud, can it pick up the things that I'm doing manually and help me so that by the time I leave the patient's room, 80% of my documentation's done. And I have more time to do the care that I went into healthcare to do. And so those are some of the emerging trends that we wanted to kind of just share with you, because it's on the what's the word? Precipice? Precipice, I can't speak. It's on the precipice and it's coming into our space. And so Molly's now gonna just kind of share what we're doing now at St. Luke's in order to address some of these things.
Yeah, thanks, Lexi. And some, I mean, Lexi touched on a little bit of some of the things that we're actually incorporating. Most of what she is describing is either already part of care, in some way at St. Luke's, or it's being tested in our lab, which I'm about to tell you about. But also, if you have questions about what's actually happening in your local healthcare system, we can talk about that at the end too. But I'm gonna Lexi's kind of painted this big picture out there, and I as you were talking and even comparing it to the responses at the beginning, were you surprised about what people said? I was like, oh, interesting, because we asked that. I'm just going to let you in insider baseball here. We asked that question at the beginning, and we're going to ask it at the end because we thought, our hypothesis was that we would be touching on things that actually address the pain points you said. And I feel maybe they do tangentially, but I think it's points out to me, there's all this tension, right? Lexi had that slide with we have tension in terms of shrinking margins. Consumers are I want to know what my bill is, and it can't be too expensive, right? We have to be able to afford care. So there's all these things that are kind of in tension. Patients want that relationship with their doctor where they can actually talk to someone who knows them and cares about them. And then we're doing things like virtual nursing or messaging your provider that's providing more access, but is it providing that kind of personal touch? So I don't know, that's just kind of an observation to me as we're I'm oh man, our job's really hard. So anyway, that's really interesting and appreciate just hearing that feedback. So this amazing landscape of technology is not the problem. There's plenty of technology out there. One of my favorite things that happened this year, we have this lab space that I promise again I'm going to tell you about, but Lexi does 1 million tours. I don't know, you probably average a tour a week, right? At least, sometimes many, many tours. And every time, except for one, she's brought people through. People are like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I wish we had these whiteboards. I can't believe this computer vision can look at you and know what your heart rate is. Incredible. The one group that was not impressed, high school kids. And they were and I wasn't there unfortunately, but Lexi told me they were this isn't new. Which I thought was hilarious. They were from the tech charter, so they were a little bit more tech-minded than most, but I was that's true. And the challenge we have in healthcare is not the technology, it's how do we implement it? How do we make it work within the workflows of our doctors and nurses so that it doesn't like make their lives worse, right? And then also work for the patient. So it's kind of funny little tidbits as we were all talking, I was thinking about. So what we've done at St. Luke's to try and like understand and get our arms around all of this amazing technology, and also how do we actually practically use it and implement it, we've created the Emerging Technologies Lab. I'll show you what it looks like, but first I'm going to tell you kind of a little bit about why we even wanted to do this. So the vision behind the lab is to place patients, clinicians, and stewardship at the center of technology decisions within St. Luke's. The first two things make sense, right? We care about patients, we care about clinicians, obviously. The stewardship thing, actually, I would say probably drove this more than anything else. Because healthcare systems, most healthcare systems, will enter into multi-year, multi-million-dollar contracts with vendors based on seeing some demos that they like, hey, here's our product. It's amazing. Let's do a demo. See how everything worked perfectly? Let's buy it. I mean, what could go wrong, right? And you get things in, and even if the technology is great, you get things in, and every health system is like a special snowflake with its own weird workflows and own weird stuff. And we have had many, many times where we've bought a technology and then had to actually buy another technology to solve the problems of that technology, or have duplicative technologies because one doesn't work the way we thought it would. And so the lab is really solving that problem of like, let's have a space that feels a little bit like a clinic, you know, a clinical space, where we can bring something in and test it before we actually buy it. The purpose, I kind of just said this, right? It's a proving ground for responsible innovation. I talked about the stewardship piece, but another part of it is sparking curiosity, elevating clinician voice, and de-risking technology. And that sparking curiosity thing has actually been, it's one of my favorite things. Our emerging technologies team, which is part of our broader team, has a 10-word bio. I wish Angela hadn't left. A 10-word bio, which I encourage you if you're part of a team to like create or even create for yourself, which is we make new and scary feel like business as usual. And so the lab is a place where we can take some of the stuff that might be intimidating or scary, and we allow clinicians, we allow patients to come in and experience it before it's actually in their environment for the first time, and be able to like influence the way that we implement it, the way that we configure it. And that's one piece of how we do that. All right, so getting into like what it is. So this is a little blueprint of the space. And actually it's, I mean, I wonder if you could even see it. I don't know. So St. Luke's Plaza right down the road here. In St. Luke's Plaza 4, the old MK Center, if you're a Boise OG, is like right in the middle of this sea of cubicles. There's this magical space that you enter. That's the Emerging Technologies Center, and it feels very different. We've intentionally, like, we brought in a local design group to like paint the walls, and like we tried to make the vibe very different than like the Cube Farm that maybe like crushes creativity. So we tried to really make this a place that would spark that curiosity. We also designed it really pragmatically. So this shows you, it's like an attempt to span all of the areas of like the continuum of patient care that we could think about. And I'll show you some pictures of it in a minute, but like there's this waiting room / kind of collaboration space area, a patient home. We've got our little kind of nursing station, virtual care center set up. We have a couple of clinic rooms, which we've also already we've done a couple different things with, and then we have our large kind of inpatient space. One thing is, like, this is our setup, like this is how we started it, but all of these walls that you see here are modular. They can be moved around. And that's even like with our design elements, like we have this big pegboard it's really fun and kind of funky, but you can move it. Every single thing in the lab can be changed and moved. And at first we were like, I'm gonna be real. Like, I was like, that's just like something cool to say, like, oh, we're gonna be so flexible and forward thinking. But then almost immediately we had the need to change things. I was like, oh, cool. It also was like something we actually use. So that's awesome. So I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. So the lab, we're gonna kind of give you a quick little virtual tour. This is the patient home. There's actually, it's funny, every time we do, I'm like, there's more in there than this, than you can see. But the patient home is actually becoming, this is one of the things I think that's further behind, because we have to kind of pick what we're gonna focus on one thing at a time. But this is a space that needs a lot of attention because of all the things that Lexi mentioned at the beginning. And we know that actually the number one thing that can shape your health outcomes, the number one kind of like statistic about you, is your zip code. So where you live and the access you have to care, and maybe what the demographics financially are in that area, are going to really impact your outcomes. So thinking about ways that we can bring it, like remote monitoring, any way that we can actually allow more access and more connection to folks who maybe don't live in a space where they have that access. That's kind of what we're looking at there. Oh, yeah, sorry. So hospital at home, we have a fairly new, I don't know what time is anymore, but I think it's maybe like a year old. I'm bad at guessing. I don't know if anyone else feels like that. Ever since COVID, literally, I don't know my problem. But yeah, so I think about a year ago, we launched our hospital at home. We have a home and community-based services program that's broader than that. But hospital at home does allow for patients to actually, they do a whole setup at home. They have a really clear kind of eligibility and criteria for folks to do this, but they give them a setup at home and they allow them to be monitored in the comfort of their own homes. It does promote more healing. It promotes better outcomes, because as you could imagine, if you're sitting in a hotel room, or not a hotel, we wish, a hospital room, like they're like, basically there's signs in there that say like, don't get up, like sit there, like do not move, because we don't want people falling. We don't want people wandering about most of the time. At home, people do, right? They naturally move about their space. So being at home promotes faster healing for the right population, and actually is less expensive. So that's a huge area of focus that we hope to continue. Our clinic space. So we had 2 clinic rooms, and we're kind of in the process of going back to this. So far, I would say this space, well, I'll show you how we used it, but the clinic space is the least utilized of our rooms, so I'm just gonna skip past instead of talking about it. The inpatient has been really our focus. So we have started construction of a new tower. I don't know if anybody's kind of noticed that. We call it internally the Downtown Campus Improvement Project. It's going to be a hospital tower. And part of one of the really cool things about having this lab is we're helping design what we think, we're recommending anyway, what we think that experience of the future should look like from a technology perspective. And so what you see right here is our inpatient room. There's 2 beds. Now, that's not typical. We have 2 beds in there because we actually have 2 experiences set up in here. We have one that's more like ideal. So this monitor, we'd love if all of our monitor, you can't see how big it is, but it's not quite this big, but it's way bigger than the vast majority of like the monitors you're gonna see or the TVs you're gonna see in an inpatient setting. But it's kind of like our dream setup. And then next to it, this little guy right here, which our CMIO calls prison TVs, is actually more accurate to what we have in our hospitals now. So we are trying to kind of have a space that both is like thinking about the future, but acknowledging reality, and having the ability to test different things on different types of devices, so that we can, like, we have to sort of join reality in terms of expense, because as you could imagine, the things that everyone likes and wants are the most expensive, just like what we want, right? They're the most expensive things. So we have to kind of marry up, how do we balance out the features and the functionality and the experience with the cost? So this inpatient room, currently, actually, why don't you say, you're so much more involved. What are we testing right now in the inpatient experience?
Yeah, so we are just starting a proof of concept on the digital whiteboards and digital signage that I mentioned, and we are in the discovery phase right now. And so building out our requirements, connecting with our clinicians and patients, and then our next phase is moving into infotainment and patient experience, as well as integration and smart room features. And then the next one is ambient listening in the inpatient space.
Yeah. And the goal, like we kind of have to separate them out just to break it down and do any kind of like testing, right? But the goal really is at the end, we have to think of this as a cohesive room, a cohesive experience that again fits with the workflow. And one of the things that comes to mind, so Lexi was talking about computer vision, and then she was talking about ambient documentation, ambient intelligence. And what we want, what we hope, and I think our hypothesis is that we have to put those things together for like nurses. So if you think about and I'm curious, how many of you have had a clinic visit where your doctor has been like, all right, I'm going to record a conversation? It's becoming so much more common. Yeah, I did recently too for the first time. I was like, that's so cool. I know about that. It's really amazing, and it's like one of those like incredible, very rare win-wins for the patient and the clinician. But it's like nurses, and the challenge of bringing this into nursing, I'm going to talk in front of a nurse, I'll probably say stuff wrong, but like nurses don't say everything they're doing out loud the way that you might more naturally have a conversation with your primary care provider, right? A nurse isn't like, well, I see that your face is puffy and you peed this much, right? That's what they say. Just kidding. I know that's not correct, but they do, like they might say those things if they had to, right? If it was going to be documented, but they're typically just assessing, and then they go outside the room and they do their notes, right? And sometimes it's crazy what nurses do. They'll write stuff down on little notepads, and they might not actually put it into their chart. Oh, paper towel, that's a new one. Fantastic. They might not put in their chart until hours later. Is that what we want? I don't know. Is that going to be the most accurate documentation? Probably not. So it's really just kind of solving this problem. Okay, if the nurses are doing things and it doesn't make sense for them to always be saying them out loud for ambient intelligence to capture, if we can pair that with computer vision, where it's monitoring, like that computer can zoom in and see how much urine, how much is, could they? If it's like a catheter. This is what happens when non-clinical people start talking, but I'm gonna keep going. Or like how much is in their IV bag, like all kinds of things that could be captured by computer vision and take that burden again off the clinician. Yeah. Please. Yeah.
The most annoying thing, and I was at a St. Luke's in a NICU, whatever.
Oh yeah.
And the biggest annoyance was one of the systems wasn't working the way it was supposed to. Kept stopping for some reason.
Oh.
The rest of it was super fine.
Yeah.
Right? So are you looking at this in some of those instances? Are you putting in maybe AI systems for intelligence to monitor what's good versus what's bad?
Ooh, I
so
love
that
that.
when you're developing this new environment, I mean, like the bigger TV with more things that nobody understands might not be as valuable as maybe just the TV working. The smaller TV working so the kid can watch something, keep himself busy. And, I see the value of having big monitors and all of that, but I don't see, it might just scare the kid more that there's more stuff that's understanding not happening.
Yeah.
I'm just curious to understand.
Love that.
So a big thing that Molly's about to get into is the process behind what we do. And we are very grounded in, we want to be problem driven and not just bright, shiny object driven. And that's the way that IT usually works, honestly. And so she'll talk about some of the fundamentals that are ensuring we're monitoring that specific.
Yeah, and I also I realize I kind of skipped over. So the beauty of and this is just one example. I get your point. Your point is like, can we get the fundamentals first? Like, can we do the normal stuff right first? And totally 100% agree with that. And this is sort of, the lab is a place to kind of look a little bit further ahead, but your point is well taken. The monitor in particular, that's the vehicle for infotainment, like Lexi said earlier, and that really just means we have all kinds of issues with not just language translation, but like you were kind of saying, can you tell me that I don't know what that medical term means. What does that actually mean? And so part of that monitor is actually patient education and the ability to better communicate with the specialists that they need, to translate language, to translate into language that people can actually understand. So we skipped over kind of the why behind that, but to Lexi's point, we absolutely have to test with clinicians and with patients to know, is this something that's just going to be scary and not a value add, or is this really worth it? Yeah.
I'd like to add on to the idea of interaction with youth. As someone who grew up in elsewhere, involve a little bit of play and fun at every level because the healing process is faster. For example, when we talk about like allergies, the older systems, you have like a game when you blew in and blew out. But when you talk about general stuff, we used to have a facility, one of the old children's hospital used to have like game cubes and stuff while waiting. Or siblings would play while their other siblings were being getting seen. Obviously that being taken out is not helping, but I would recommend focusing on that when you're enrolling technology is the element of play, because play for every age is a matter of point. It makes us well.
Amen.
Yeah, I was just going to share, we actually have some of our technical guys, the very smart men, they're actually digging into and thinking about how we can do engaging interactions, and they're looking at technology that leverages some computer vision to, specifically in our pediatrics area first to get started, how can we get sick kids out of their rooms and in the hall and playing and gamifying their experience. And so we're working with this company that's developing actual kind of, how do you describe them? Their characters. You get to build a character that follows you throughout your care experience, and then they get to go up to these interactive boards and they can pull their character into the scene and play with other kids. But let's say the scene is a beach, and now I can dig with my character because the camera is catching me and you can see the sand moving and find treasures. Or now I'm going into my patient room again and I have my first MRI. And instead of just the nurse explaining it in adult terms, your character can also come and help augment some of that education. So we're trying to find ways that do just that, and then finding how we pull that across the system and not just for kids.
Well, I really focus, I have someone work with the adult side too.
100%.
Because no hospital or clinic has ever done adult, and that is in my opinion, because adults want to play too, and we don't get breaks either, go
Yeah.
from work to school or school to work or work to home. And when we do get play, especially those who don't have kids, it's difficult. We can't even bring our pets in. So therapy dogs are great, but they're not always available on the floor because they're more on the pediatric side.
Yeah, love that. So I'm going to, just so you know, I'm going to try and wrap this up in 4 minutes so we can see what other questions and conversation we have. This is good stuff. So this is kind of our nursing, command center kind of. Yeah, back-end operations. There's a nurse call station. This is not on. We should get a picture with it on. But that's where like a virtual nurse would actually see into our inpatient room when we're testing and when we're doing demos and stuff like that. So that's kind of that room. And then we have this waiting area, way nicer than any of our waiting areas. I think probably, I don't think waiting areas have gotten much attention probably in the last 30 years. But this is also a collaboration space. So I mentioned really wanting the vibe here to be like, we're bringing in patients, we're bringing in clinicians. A lot of times at the end of a tour, we'll sit down here and we'll have just like really good conversations, candid feedback. So it's been an incredible, this part's kind of been one of the better spaces, even though it's kind of not used for a ton of technology. So that's kind of what it looks like. But like Lexi alluded to, like it looks great, like it looks cool and fun and whatever, but like what's actually behind it? So, man, 4 years ago, I think, we launched, I shouldn't say tried to, we launched an innovation center of excellence within St. Luke's without any lab, and it was just, Adam was there. I don't know if you even remember it, because it was Lexi and I. And that was kind of it. And it was like, all right, you guys, you're going to, well, I said, hey, could we? And they're like, sure, yeah, whatever. So we created this Innovation Center of Excellence, and it was built on these principles and trying to like diffuse this language throughout the system to like start getting people to think the same way, talk the same way, and not be kind of so stuck where they were. So curiosity, empathy, and rapid experimentation. I want to say so curiosity and empathy makes me think of what you were just describing with your hospital stay and what you experienced. So, I mean, like immediately as you start talking, I'm like, I want to just set up time with you and hear all about it. Like, we spend a ton of time asking, we spend a ton of time going to where the problem is, going to where people are experiencing their pain points, and observing and documenting and understanding what's going on. I'll give you an example of that here in a sec. So that's kind of curiosity and empathy combined. We never had a place to do the rapid experimentation. And it's funny because I remember when we were doing Innovation Center of Excellence, we'd talk to other health systems and people would be like, you don't need a lab. Oh, it's like a Trump. A lab is, I didn't know I could do that. A lab is just like a place, where people do innovation theater and it doesn't matter. And we were like, okay, we don't have a lab, so we're fine with that. Yeah, labs are dumb. Now that we have one, I'm like, no, if you do it right, labs are actually pretty awesome because it's actually what's gotten people to understand what the point is and why you do these things and why you spend time going and interviewing and observing your customer. And so it's been huge. So to give you a few examples of how we do this, so curiosity. So if we have a problem that we're trying to solve, we don't just say like, all right, let's go like look for some technology. We start by inviting everybody that we can think of that might touch that problem, like all the representatives of that. So this was, I think, our inpatient experience of the future. So that technology we were describing that's like we're putting together to say this is what we'd recommend for our new tower. It all started with bringing in folks we had food nutrition services, we had our, obviously our clinicians, we had, providers, nurses, everybody that you could think of, building services, to come in and think about what are all the jobs to be done, is the language we use, what are the biggest pain points, what's getting in the way, what could make this really good, and we start there. Like we assume we know nothing. We have lots of assumptions, but we use them to really understand what's going on. And then we have empathy. So not only do we go places and we look and we try to really understand the problem and the customer, but this is showing where we actually brought in, this is for Hello Care, which was our virtual nursing, which is starting very slowly to roll out. But this was when we brought in like our stakeholders and our users to come and see it. We had upfront success criteria that again was created and validated by the users. And then they came and actually scored it. And that's how we validated that this was a good solution to move forward. We actually had it in our environment, we tested it, we looked at it from the clinician experience perspective, and that's where we landed. Yeah, that's amazing. So Lexi and team, I did very little, brought over 300 folks through the lab that will be using that technology. And like, what else do you think that does that we weren't thinking about at the time? What else do you think that does besides like, yeah, we're validating it, but what else do you think happens when you get the nurses and the doctors in here early to see it? 100%. He's smarter than us. Yeah, all of a sudden people are like, we want Hello Care, which is not normally like, what is this weird thing you're making us do, IT? And so that has been huge. So then, rapid experimentation. I already talked a little bit about how that happens. Our process, I feel like I've kind of covered this, right? We go through all of these different aspects. The one maybe we haven't talked about as much. So design and plan and test and analyze. It's not that cool aspect. It's like really behind the scenes, and the smart men you talked about earlier hate this part, but it's the magic part is we actually document that success rate. We write it down. What does success look like? We don't just put something in there and say, does everybody like it? Like that's how pilots a lot of times are run. That's not what we do. We actually validate it with data, and then we make a recommendation. All right, I'm gonna finish off with a story of this in action. So these are our 2 clinic rooms. I said everything's modular, you can move it all around. I thought it was a gimmick, but it wasn't. Here's what happened. We brought a VP through the lab. We're trying to kind of socialize it and let people know like, hey, whatever, we wanna bring real problems in here. And we're asking her, hey, do you have anything you wanna use these clinic rooms for? And she was like, well, not really, but like I do have this thing, like we have in the Boise Chemo Infusion Center, we actually have to move it and expand it, and we're redesigning it, and we have like a blueprint and a design, but we're just like, we haven't tested it. We're just gonna put this new thing in, and in like horrible, vulnerable time of people's lives when they're sitting for hours in their chemo chair, we're gonna hope it's not terrible. And we were like, well, let's not do that. So what we did was we actually, like Lexi, amazing, worked with all like building services and our interior decorators and like everybody to mock up what, was it a half of a pod? Because there's typically 4, we had 2. Yeah. So, and do we have? Oh, good. Okay. This is better. So mocked it up. We got actually multiple types of chairs and equipment in here, but this is like a live action shot from like bringing these stakeholders in. So we've got clinicians who actually work in the space, and then all kinds of other representatives here as well. A couple things I guess to point out. One thing that we didn't realize is that probably the biggest thing we learned from this was not about the technology. It was about the layout. So like you can see all this like kind of funny like labeled stuff. One of the biggest pain points folks had, like the clinicians had, was they didn't have sterile space. They didn't have all the supplies they needed. It was not good, right? So the ability to use this space to kind of like Lexi, they were moving stuff around, like, I mean, multiple hours and sessions until they got this kind of configuration that everyone's like, this is amazing. So from the clinician experience, we got that. To me, the magical part was we also had patients come in. We had folks, I mean, I'm sure all of you have been touched by cancer yourself or have a loved one who has experienced it. Getting infusion for hours, it's uncomfortable, it's certainly inconvenient. And even things like if you look at how these chairs are positioned, right? When we had it set up, it's like, you're just like staring across at someone else looking miserable. You're like, that's awful. And that was the layout. Like that was what they were like, oh, it looks good on the blueprint, like not good. So all of these things were addressed and solved and iterated on. And so this just gives one example of how we use this space. God, I can't have to tell one more. This was my favorite. So these are like, what are they called? Sound. Yeah, they're directional speakers. So one of the things, like complaints from patients is like, I can bring my AirPods in and I can like listen to a podcast for like 4 hours or whatever, like, but it's kind of uncomfortable. The nurse has to come and get your attention and, it's just kind of weird. So this was like by far the fan favorite that the architects did bring in as a result of hearing that pain point was these directional speakers that you can still interact, but you can hear like your podcast or your music or your meditation just in that space where the patient is. So that to me was really cool. Okay, so wrapping it up. The whole goal of the lab and everything we do is to understand if the things we're bringing in are going to make life better, if they're going to be desirable for the patient, if they're going to be feasible, can we actually do it, like we're not wasting money when we actually put it into implementation, and then viable. We always have to have cost in mind, of course. So with that, coming back to this question at the beginning, what do you want healthcare to feel like for you and your family in 5 years? Now, I know those things did not all address the pain points that you came up with, but I do hope you can see at least the steps we're taking, and super open to feedback, but the steps that we're taking to make sure that the things we are investing in as a health system in the community are the things that are actually solving problems for patients.
And I would just add that we've only been open since October. And so this is all of this we've been able to bring in, but as we are identifying these other priorities, that's what's going to shape the future of what we're doing in here.
Yep. Yeah. So thank you. Do you have any questions for us? We have a couple minutes. Yeah. Oh, thanks.
What's your current sense of priorities about applying this model to what kind of health conditions are most benefiting from? Great question.
Right now, we're trying to figure out exactly how we're prioritizing things, I'd say, and the driving force for us and why we're doing the inpatient experience of the future is exactly what Molly said. We have this impending tower being built, and in order for anything to be influenced, we have to have it built, designed, and recommended before the end of this next year. And so that's what our driver is right now. Then I feel like we've been getting a lot of input from the ambulatory space with how are we increasing the acuity of patients we can have at the hospital at home, or how are we allowing for these comorbidity patients to be treated better. And so it is coming from like our senior leaders, and we're trying to tie back to strategy, but that is something that we are still working out on getting dialed in perfectly.
Like for me, so Lexi's hands-on, like doing this amazing work. For me, that's my biggest focus is how do we socialize this with the right folks? We're working on clinician partnerships so we can have ongoing feedback of what are the biggest problems that we're seeing. And we've also talked about patient cohorts, which will be down that's, as you might imagine, it's a difficult thing to set up, like, hey, come and like volunteer your time and hang out with us. Like, I don't know, we're working through that. But our goal is absolutely to have that inform what we have in the lab. Are we at time?
Time for one more question.
Okay.
So is this innovation space available for public tours, or is this it's not just internal? Okay.
Yeah, you just have to coordinate it with me. And so I'm like, we brought through a whole high school. We brought through lots of different groups.
Leadership Boise came through.
Yeah, Leadership Boise came through. So if you have an organization or group that would like to come, we just have security that we have to get you through. And so that's the only reason why we have to coordinate it and to make sure I'm there.
All right. Thank you so much. Happy to connect with you afterward, but really appreciate you being here and hope you have an amazing hack and tree fort.